Hello for a, whoa, let me put my mic on. Friday night beer review. I feel like doing something. I've got more stories to tell. Before I go on about this beer. So I know a lot of you really aren't here for beer reviews, but my dog's pattering around here. These stories, I've got to really be in the right frame of mind to tell these stories. You know, that's just, it's like wine. I don't serve up these stories till I feel right about it. You know, kind of hard to explain. I've got a couple to tell yet. Doozies, I'd say. Definitely. But I hope to get to those soon as it feels right. All right, for the beer review here. What we have here is Voodoo Ranger Higher Plane IPA. And there's the 6-pack that I just paid $13 for it. That way. $13.79 to be exact at Tops Supermarket. Yes, Voodoo Ranger Higher Plane IPA. Hazy Imperial IPA. And when they say Imperial, you know it's strong. And this beer claims to be 8.5% alcohol by volume. And that is pretty strong for a beer. Voodoo Ranger line of beers is brewed by New Belgium breweries, which I believe it started out in Asheville, North Carolina. And now they have a brewery out in Fort Collins, Colorado. All right. Generally, I like all their beers. I really haven't had a beer by this brewery that I did not think was a pretty decent beer. Though I will say they all kind of taste the same. They're using the same type of hops. They're pretty much all they brew is IPAs as far as I know. It'd be nice if they mixed it up once in a while. And on the can it's got some freaky looking skeleton Space Cadet. Looks like a giant hops bud that he's getting off on somehow. Right. All right, let's get it. I like the can, I must say. I do like the packaging. Beers have gotten better. I've been drinking beer for a long time. Figure? Oh yeah, right, my beer hat. I've been drinking beer for quite a few years, and beers have improved considerably. I don't care what anybody says. The beer scene's gotten better. Better late than never. All right, this beer is, I don't know how, I forgot to get my thermometer. I'll get it. Oh, pours pretty nice. It is hazy like they say it is. They claimed it would be hazy. I don't need to describe to you. Oops. Oops. Well, at any rate, that'll happen. That's what you got there. It's a fairly hazy beer, I must say. Fairly hazy beer. Another candle. Smells kind of grapefruity, citrusy. You get the hops up front. The IBUs on this is 45. IBUs stand for International Bitterness Units. IBUs, it's just a way. So when they're selling a beer like this, an IPA, which you know is supposed to be a fairly bitter beer because of the style, give you an idea how bitter it is, because I've seen beers up there 75, 80 IBUs. This is 45, and they're almost undrinkable, really, unless they're really very well balanced. So 45 really isn't that bitter. I tried to find out what type of hops they put into this, but I couldn't find that anywhere. It's a fairly new beer, as far as I know. And they don't say anywhere on their site what type of hops or malt they use in this beer, other than pretty sure it's barley and hops, and possibly a little bit of wheat malt, make it hazy. Let's see it. Be right back. I forgot the thermometer's part of these. Temperature of a beer makes a pretty good difference on taste and things. All right. Well, the last thing this was in was a potato, so a couple of nights ago. I don't suppose that'll hurt anything. Oh yeah. Right, this was in a baked potato. All right, what do we got? I'm gonna guess. Well, all right, I'm not gonna just do this. 59, 57, 55. Holding at 55. I haven't had it in a cooler for very long. 54. And 54 it is. All right, so let's get to tasting this beer. I've never had this beer. It's the first taste, so this will be the first impression, truly. Smooth, drinkable. Doesn't overwhelm, didn't really give me that kick. You know, if I take a drink, my first drink of an IPA, and I go, ooh, it's pretty rough. No, this didn't do that to me. You know, it's actually very drinkable for their beers at that. And being that this is a strong beer, 8.5% alcohol, it's actually pretty smooth. Tastes about like it tastes like an IPA, but kind of a weak, kind of a mellow, weaker IPA. You get the grapefruit up front. That's what I call it. Some people say, oh, you get mangoes and hints of bananas and esters, and like, man, you must be living or something, because I get, I don't know, I guess I need to have a better imagination. Let's see here. So far, not too bad. Appearance, I'm going to rate the appearance, well, it's not bad really for what it is. Very fine bubbles on it. Lace, decent. Hazy, but not overly so. Amber, I mean, for a hazy beer, this really has pretty good clarity. I don't know what you'd call it. It's not over the top. Folks, we may have a new favorite Voodoo Ranger of their line of beers. This probably right now is about my new favorite from them. It's an easier to drink, and they have some IPAs that I do like. This drink's a lot easier than those. There's no harsh kick to it or anything. No harshness to it at all. So if you want a easy to drink, rather strong Imperial IPA, and since how they've got a brewery out in Colorado and one on the East Coast, it's probably pretty well available. And you might want to pick yourself up some of this. I'd say, personally, I would get it a little colder than what I just did. I'd prefer my beer colder. Of this type. So how is everybody? It's good to hear from you. Those of you that have been kind of following me for a number of years when I was doing my Christian stuff, my Christian stories, and then moved into this stuff. No reason. I mean, I only had so many of these miraculous stories to tell. It's not like every day. Well, every day is a miracle, isn't it? And we give thanks to the Lord through the Lord's Prayer. However else you do, I'm sure you all are better at it than me, most of you. I tell them, you know, what beautiful artwork he has in nature and such. But you know, I had like 16 of those really kind of extraordinary events, which is why I shared them online, and I'm very happy to have this venue to be able to tell people about the great things God has done in my life. And doesn't mean I've had an easy walk or anything like that, but it's just to let me know He's there for me through it all. But then I've had all these other darker experiences that I've been relating, paranormal stories, and I've got some more of those type of stories to tell. And I really don't get any joy out of telling ghost stories, honestly. I mean, telling the stories about God and things He did in my life really left me feeling very uplifted inside, joyous. And for me to go back and revisit those stories, it's part of the reason I put them out there was for myself. Because I'm a man of little faith, really. And I need to remind myself, you know, when times get hard and life just seems to be just a drudgery and sorrow, and remind myself, no, God's still there. God is unchanged. And if He's got plans for you and me, man, you're set up. Seriously. Just got to endure this time. And be strong and grow through it. There's a reason for this. Whatever, I think everybody's going through a hard time. While I'm letting my beer mellow out. Christian beer reviews. All right. Jesus was said to have been a man that liked his beer. Now, they said wine, but I read an article by the Smithsonian Institution that said the word that they used when they translated it and said that Jesus made wine and Jesus liked his wine and even was accused of liking his wine a lot, once or twice. They said that really the word meant, you'll have to check me on this, I'm not going to look it up, but it just meant a mildly alcoholic drink, which they said would have been beer, probably imported from Egypt, because people of Jesus' financial class could not afford wine. That was kind of set aside for nobility and wealthy. So when they translated, they gave, you know, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, they gave him a drink that wine, you know, not lowly beer. But yeah, Christian beer reviews. So, yeah. Having a little bit of an off night. Nothing bad. Just very sorry about my mom who's in a nursing home and I can't go see her because of this pandemic. And it'd be good someday to look back at these videos and this pandemic is history, and it will be. Just a lot on my mind, really. So, you know, I'm going to tell a ghost story. The Skeen Manor is kind of my next one, I think, unless something happens between now and then. It's kind of an extraordinary story, honestly. And there's actually something to be learned from it, definitely. There's a lesson in that one. And then after the Skeen Manor, my last one, and for now, involves me moving out into the woods, living in the woods all by myself. and encountering quite a few things and having some of them follow me. It's pretty creepy. It gets to actually go. I've got a lot. That's going to be a long one. I might have to break it into 2 or 3. I'm going to talk about living out in the mountains and that time of my life, seeking God with everything I had. But I think that made me a high priority target of sorts spiritually. Yeah. I've always wondered how I'm going to tell this story. It involves Bigfoot, Whitehall, New York's Bigfoot. Well, I've encountered that twice, and during that period of time, and I never even heard of it. So when that happened, I didn't even know what to think. Well, I know what it was, but we'll save that for that story, which should be story 49, I think. Back to the beer. Folks, this is actually a pretty good IPA. I mean, really, I really wasn't, honestly, I want to always be honest with you. I really didn't feel like even drinking a beer tonight, honestly. But I'm very bored and kind of lonely a bit and just thought, I want to reach out. I got to do something, you know. I've been working at the animation software, trying to learn it. And whatever, I've got a lot going on. I started drawing my Army retirement. Oh, it's in a different part of life. But I thought, I kind of forced myself. Man, this is actually surprising. Tell you what, if I was in the mood for a beer, I'd probably be raving about this because it's pretty good, really, tell you the truth. It's a very, very drinkable IPA. And it's not a weak IPA by any means. You know, they got these session, they borrow, those brewers borrow. They call it a session beer or a session IPA, like session, a period of time. Well, they borrowed that from an English style nut brown ale. It used to be called a session beer because it was like 3% alcohol. You're not going to get loaded off it. You know, you'd have to be funneling it to get drunk off it. So they called it a session beer because it was weak in alcohol, and you could sit there with friends and family and drink that beer and not get intoxicated. So now they call all weak beers a session beer. Well, the Imperial thing, this is an Imperial. They call this an Imperial IPA. I think I told that in the last video. Originally, Imperial Russian Stout, like 30 years ago or more, before any of this craft brewery stuff, they didn't have all this, obviously, and I'm pretty sure most of you know that, but there was an Imperial Russian Stout. It was a style of beer, and it was a Russian black ale that was brewed extremely strong, like 13%. So Imperial Stout means really strong. And so now they use Imperial. Imperial just means high in alcohol. So, but that's where it came from. The old Imperial Russian Stout. And they just kind of used it, recycled it. So for an Imperial IPA, very drinkable and actually pretty tasty. I don't know, it's got a balance of hops that I like, to tell you the truth. I mean, I've used to grow hops back in the 90s. I used to brew beer. I grew hops, malted my own barley, bottled the stuff. I made some pretty good beer. I really could brew anything. Once you learn how to brew, it really comes down, it's like cooking. Right equipment, good sanitation, the best ingredients, and good recipes and techniques. And a lot of it actually goes into the type of water, you know, what your water's suitable for. So it all seems to come together in this beer. Voodoo Rangers Higher Plane IPA. Well, I think they got the name right because for their line of beers, this is a higher plane. I wouldn't put it up there to, top, 10%. But for their line of beers, which are pretty decent beers, this is indeed a higher plane IPA for them. They've set the bar higher for themselves. I hope you all are doing fine. I understand, we're all kind of the same. We all have our good days and ho-hum days and hard days, and we have our strengths, our weaknesses, and our faith and our doubts. And then there's other people. Like, I seem to be a magnet for road rage people lately. What the heck? Never make eye contact. Rule 1, don't engage them in any way. I drive a small Audi car, nothing fancy, other it's an Audi. It's a nice little car, I like it, honestly. It's a diesel TDI. And I got like some people in big pickup trucks, and that really is the standard guy vehicle around where I live. Man, they're really aggressive. Makes me wonder, like that personality trait where they're loud and pushy, tailgate, no consideration. Makes me wonder if that their personality on the road with their big truck is the same as their personality with the people in their lives, and I'm inclined to think yes. Inconsiderate, aggressive, I don't know, intimidating. And you could take all three of those and boil it down into insecure. I don't know. I'm trying to psychoanalyze the local New York State rednecks, and trust me, rednecks live in New York State too. It's not all city people here. I've got some stories I want to tell. Y'all leave comments, because if somebody tells me to do this, I've got some stories from my childhood that aren't ghost stories or anything, but like just things I remember. Like I lived in West Virginia, South Charleston, back in the late 60s, like 67 to 70, was in South Charleston, West Virginia. And I got a couple of memories from there. One is about this going off into the mountains to visit some people. Like, have you ever seen the movie Wrong Turn? I swear this exists. And I've been there, and I survived. Barely. I got shot at, and I was a kid. I'm sorry, I'm just having a chat with you all at this point. All right, the beer. I give it 4 out of 5. I reserve 5 for... I'd give this maybe 4.5 out of 5. I really can't find fault in it. It just hasn't really... It's impressed me with its drinkability for what it is quite a bit. But unlike the last beer review I did of that chocolate stout last week, that was exceptional. That stuff is really exceptional. That stuff is gets 5 out of 5. But like I was saying about West Virginia, I got a lot of stories. Maybe just want to tell them. It actually kind of for whatever's sake, my kids, grandkids may listen to this stuff someday. But I could tell you some stories about some hillbillies and people out in the mountains back in the 60s. The Appalachian people. And my family, my mom's family, are Appalachian people through and through. I mean, they were coal miners and Confederate soldiers and and shakers and movers too. One of my ancestors was very influential in the founding of Houston, Texas, and the last name is Wooten. And so my dad's family were, well, his mother was from Scotland, and his father's family were German Mennonites, or they called them Pennsylvania Dutch, but they were from Germany, Bavaria, Switzerland. But they were Mennonites. Oh, very humble people. My father was a very humble man, a very quiet man. He was actually the quietest person I think I've ever known. And he was extremely well in math, and he was an engineer, and not the sort with a shovel. I mean, he did work for NASA. He was very proud of his work for NASA. He was a very quiet, humble person, very simple. And you never know what he did. He liked his beer, but very much in moderation. I never even heard him swear once. He always had like a substitute. Like he'd say, I don't shivaget. He'd mix it around, you know. But my dad was a good man. And I'm staring at his box of ashes right now. So I'll get around to the ghost stories, and Skene Manor involves more than just Skene Manor. Actually, it involves me. Had a weird way. I had a really good job and I was working, but I was homeless briefly. It involves a broken love and me winding up getting ripped off, cleaned out. Actually lived under a bridge for one night. And that was an experience. I'll talk about that. Yeah, so I got to kind of feel ready for these stories. You know, I think about them and I turn them over in my head, have a cup of coffee, go for a drive, think about, you know, I should tell that story. I want to get these things done. You never know if tomorrow may not be here for me or anybody, you know. I mean, I want to get them done, but I'm not in a rush either. When it feels right, I'll do this. I'm also thinking about remaking Story 8, which is a very special story for me that I hold dear. But the audio quality in it is awful. Would have done well if I had a little $15 mic. You can hardly hear me. So I might redo Story 8. Anyway, I want to thank you all for your comments and your thoughts and such. And I'll never meet any of you. Hopefully. I'm joking. I better not get these stalkers off this. You know what? If I was like 30 years younger, you'd probably get a few stalkers. Sorry. I was just playing around. But that's good beer. Get some. I guess that's it. Finish this beer. Voodoo Rangers Higher Plane IPA. I give it a 4. I'll give it a 4. All right, thank you. Just rattling on. Take care and God bless.